Year 2020 will be remembered as one of the most challenging period in our history. COVID-19 pandemic has brought despair, destruction, and death. Today, our world war has changed from armed conflicts to war on hunger for better healthcare system, racism, and education. It's an everyday battle that confronts all of us regarding of who we are and where we are from. The following video set out different struggles faced by different people of the society in this time of pandemic. In this crucial point in our lives, we are experiencing a global crisis, not just in health, but also in many aspects of our society. That's the extent of its damaging repercussions that might be too complex or too complicated for us to digest. Life became immediately uncertain, and for many of us, that meant graduation and our post-graduation plans, including housing, careers, food, basic standards of living were revoked. The goals that we could set and the plans that we were able to make, these were crashed before our eyes. The enormous scale of the crisis and the impact it is having are naturally causing a lot of fear, uncertainty, and anxiety across the globe. As a student participating in online classes was confusing to adjust to, as we have not been prepared through simulations and practices beforehand. This home learning program is even more stressful than regular classes. Yes, normal school may have been difficult, but having friends make it so much more manageable and less stressful. Online classes takes out the benefits of having friends to socialize with, and being stuck alone, nothing but assignments. I definitely feel very stressed. This year has been super hard. There's been a lot of nights where I cried because of the things that I didn't do as a student, and that affects my mental health. Others say that students should adapt to it and stay focused. However, it is also important to recognize that adapting to online school is difficult for us, even if we are doing well in school. It's easy for them to say that since they don't understand what we have to go through this school year. I'm definitely less emotionally stable than I have been in my whole high school career. I do remember having a couple of breakdowns because of online learning. Having a quiet and a comfortable learning environment for us students is vital, but a privilege not available to all. Last, we forget that a lot of students don't have a studio-type rooms with an office-like settings to do their online classes. Students residing in crowded areas would need to shoulder the extra burden of the outside noise that can discourage focus and, of course, learning. This new modality of learning has challenged all of us. Our resentment should be heard as a cry for help and a call upon different sectors of the society. It should not be viewed as a difficult complaint, but rather an expression of universal pain felt by the students in the middle of the pandemic.
The year 2020 is a different year for all of us. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on all Filipinos and will continue to have an impact. While we sit and wait for a vaccine or a cure for the COVID-19 virus, parents and children are held up at home with the uncertainty of when the things will get back to normal. During these times, stress and anxiety are at the top of every parent's list while hiding it from their children so they don't experience the stress or anxiety they feel. Parents are trying to keep things normal as possible. However, things are constantly changing. How are families coping during these uncertain times? And how parents are making things work? Things are so much different than what they used to be. This is how I sum up my experience in this COVID-19 pandemic. When the coronavirus started, for me, it was less of a real threat compared to the current issues surrounding our nation, such as corruption, heavy traffic, and other politics-related issues. Not until it was all considered to be a threat with a magnitude of a global scale. Our nation suddenly got paralyzed and we were left unprepared. Families started to hoard necessities, if not wants. Workers were forced to stay home. Schools were shut down indefinitely, and hospitals were compelled to operate at a maximum capacity. Our home, from which was always left empty during working hours, are now filled with family members who are just about to cope up with what is happening. Working from home and trying to survive mental pressures of facing somehow an uncertain future. During these uncertain times, with a significant shifts away from normal routines, many people have expressed concerns about the impact of pandemic to their children. I want to encourage parents, educators, and students in the Challenge Success family to remember the big picture. This is a time to focus on and be grateful for your family's health, safety, and well-being. Make building strong family relationship a priority. Reach out to neighbors, friends, and others in your community to check in, offer support, and connect virtually. We will get through this together. Each family is experiencing this time differently depending on how the work commitments adults are juggling and the unique needs of each child. I worry about our underserved population in particular and for the children with challenges and learning differences who rely on food, safety, therapeutic care, and stability. Our world is crying and we totally injured. But I feel incredibly optimistic about the future. There's an antidote to fear, as it is a hope that will pull us through these difficult times by having faith that this virus will pass, listening to the medical professionals and authorities, staying indoors, keeping good hygiene and social distancing, not going on to the fear, and being mindful and supportive for this deeply affected, either physically or emotionally. I wholeheartedly believe that we'll be able to persevere and come out stronger than ever. I believe that God always has a reason for whatever happens. This was meant to happen at this time because something good will eventually come out of this. God gave families the time to enjoy each other's presence because some families don't ever get the time to be with one another. Now that families have the time, they can spend quality time with one another because this is a time for love.
With over 200 countries affected and nearly 200 million confirmed cases as of the writing, COVID-19 is relentlessly destroying our faith in this adversity. When pandemics emerge, they usually hit the poor first and worst. Regardless of where a pandemic starts, once underway, the poor tends to bear the brunt of economic shocks. When outbreaks begin, the poor are most likely have already been suffering from malnutrition and immunosuppressive conditions, which can increase susceptibility to infectious diseases. Today, the world faces a greater challenge than any before, as the COVID-19 pandemic threatens to undo years of progress in poverty eradication while exacerbating pre-existing inequalities and exposing the fragility of our systems. They say that we are a creature of habit, who doesn't work hard, who are lazy, that we only rely on the health aid and financial assistance from the administration. But the virus is not our concern anymore. That is not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is the effect of lockdowns, job losses, and economic disruptions have disproportionately affected me and the marginalized community. We are left with no choice but to starve to death. Are we even considered as one of the most important considerations at this time? Given the millions of lives at stake, we must pinpoint where social services are most needed and ensure that the social protection programs are evidence-based and inclusive. Like me, who's living in extreme poverty, my biggest concern is not the virus, but hunger. You know what? When you realize that you cannot rely solely on the government, you band together to find ways to survive, and I thank God for the people in my community who never doubt to lend a hand for those who cry for help. COVID-19 is potentially catastrophic for millions, especially for those who are already hanging by a thread. Every day I get the feeling of fighting dragons just to survive. Every waking day is a battle finding victory in the battlefield of life. You know what? It's easy for them to say that we are all affected in this pandemic. We are just in the same boat. But I beg to disagree. However, the impact of the pandemic and its consequences are felt differently depending on your status as individuals and as members of society. Let me emphasize that we are on the same ocean, but we are not on the same boat. Some are on a ship, calmly floating above, while there are others who are drowning to survive. During financial crisis, we talk about belt tightening. In these days of pandemic stress, the catchphrase is flattening the curve. Regardless, it's always the poor who suffer inequalities from these necessary correctives. We have already been on the margins before the pandemic, and now we have been pushed over the edge. We are in a situation where we are forced to starve without proper shelter, clothing, ethical rights, and educational assistance. This pandemic made us more powerless than we have already been, and our freedom is at stake. Well, maybe this is because a poverty-stricken person is at risk of vicious cycle of slavery, injustice, and prejudice. Our different social identities and the social groups we belong to determine our inclusion within society, and by extension, our vulnerability to epidemics. Poor and unequal living conditions are the consequences of deeper structural conditions that together fashion the way how societies are organized. Poor social policies and programs, unfair economic arrangements, and bad politics. But you know what? Despite the setback, I remind myself, I must fight on. I must push on against the current. The days when I want to quit are the most crucial. Those are the days where I condition myself. I encourage myself to keep on fighting but not to continue and settle with the struggle. I have the smallest bit of hope because somehow I try to make myself believe that all of this will be over and it will just be a chapter of my life, and soon enough, it will be a thing of the past. And to drive systems change and truly move the needle on ending poverty, we must view poverty through a human rights lens and work together to commit significantly more resources. We must reach the most vulnerable and marginalized in response, recovery, and resilience efforts. Access to social protection is a human right, and it is our moral imperative to make sure that no one is left behind.
Getting through this crisis is not easy and has never been easy to anyone else. We are facing our own challenge right now. Being phased out to see our family, friends, and the outside world may have been a struggle. At the heart of the unparalleled crisis of COVID-19, we, the healthcare workers, are facing several challenges in treating the patients, in reducing the spread of infection, in developing short-term strategies, and formulating long-term plans. Exposure to excessive stress for a prolonged period may have caused harmful consequences to our emotional and mental well-being. I am working and struggling during these times. It is impossible to keep up. What if my friend will get sick or my family will get infected? People are dying every day. Or what if it's me who's next? This is my calling. This is what I'm meant to do. As a health worker, I know the risk of my calling. We take risks every day because we are willing to do it. I am called for it, and this is what I want to do. Stepping out in the comfortable presence of our families, we would dread and risk the danger of getting infected just to provide the services that the people or the patients need during this pandemic. As the rest of the world steps back, we step forward. We are that bridge to their healing, and all we can do is to work hard and to fight for our patients to survive these struggles. If you are already at a max level of support that you can give to a patient and their oxygen levels are dropping, there is nothing much we can do but to let the family know and say, I am sorry for your loss. And can you imagine holding a pipe out to somebody who's intubated really sick and seeing the deep sorrow of the family. It is often forgotten that as humans, we also feel sorrow when our patients give in to the virus. We also have families. We are fearful that the virus might reach those people we love the most. We are more vulnerable than the general population due to frequent contact with infected individuals. Health workers around the world are facing unprecedented workloads in overstretched health facilities with no end in sight. We are working in a stressful and frightening work environments, not just because the virus is little understood, but because in most settings we are underprotected, overworked, and ourselves vulnerable to COVID-19. We are required to work in stressful conditions without proper protective equipment and make hard decisions involving ethical implications. The shortage of PPE has put us at risk of getting infected with COVID-19. We are making or creating unconventional strategies or solutions that could make up the lack of PPE by using our resources that we have in stock. Health workers are at risk in developing traumas and stress-related disorders due to fear of falling ill and what might happen in the future. The pandemic has also highlighted the extent to which protecting the health workers is the key to a functioning society and health systems. Healthcare workers' role is dramatically expanded and is increasingly critical. We become the most important player in screening, in developing diagnosis, and in the ongoing monitoring of the infected patients. We become the safe harbor in the midst of this slow hurricane that's sweeping the world. Despite the challenge of an overwhelmed healthcare systems, lack of adequate personal protective equipments, and the risk of infections to ourselves and to our loved ones, we, the healthcare workers, are facing this adversity through bravery, determination, and ingenuity. We are the heart and soul of the war against COVID-19. We are like soldiers, marching into battle but doesn't have enough guns to protect our ground. COVID-19 might be today's supervillain, but it does not deter us health workers from doing our job and tirelessly working to find ways to combat the threat and eventually beat the invisible nemesis. As the virus keeps spreading, healthcare professionals across the globe are facing unfortunate situations of having to make difficult decisions and to work under extreme pressures. While we are putting our health, our families, and the most importantly, our lives at risk, the least you can do is to appreciate our efforts and cooperate by staying safe indoors. Stay at home for us. This is the call of all the health workers to you and to others. The sacrifice that we are making for the safety and welfare of the humanity is priceless. On top of that, the shortage of face masks, shields, and protective gears are not working, and this makes the efforts of the healthcare workers even more extraordinary. Let us stay safe, well-informed, and positive in fighting this together hand in hand. We will get through this crisis together, and we will be multiple steps closer towards a new world with a healed humankind. The pandemic has changed our world constantly and forced us upon a world of painful transformation. This journey is not an easy one. It is an ongoing learning process that comes with various mistakes. Hoping that this tragic state of affairs on which our fellow citizens are forced to contend with may serve as a life-altering experience for everyone to disseminate and impose proper health protocols and measures to put an end on this adversity. Spread the message of hope and positivity during these trying times. It won't hurt to be kind to people whom we digitally cross paths with. We are unaware of what they are going through, Let us try to understand the situation they are in, because it has never been easy for anyone else. With a brave heart amidst the uncertainties of the future, let us hold on to each